You don't live here anymore. The words hung in the air like poison. I stood in the doorway of my own home, still wearing the black dress from my husband's funeral 3 hours ago. Victoria, my daughter-in-law, blocked the entrance with her arms crossed, her face cold as winter stone. I'm sorry, what? My voice came out as a whisper. Surely I'd heard wrong. The grief had been making everything fuzzy around the edges. This house belongs to our family now. You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave. She stepped aside just enough to reveal a locksmith kneeling by the front door, already installing new locks. My hands started shaking. Behind her, I could see my son Daniel standing in the living room, the room where we'd celebrated every Christmas for 30 years. He wouldn't look at me. His eyes stayed fixed on the carpet like there was something fascinating down there. Daniel? I called out, my voice breaking. What's happening? He opened his mouth, closed it again. Victoria's hand moved to his shoulder, squeezing. When he finally spoke, it was barely audible. Mom, please don't make this harder. I pushed past Victoria into my own home, or what used to be my home. Daniel, talk to me. Your father just died. We buried him today. What is she talking about? Everything's changed now, Victoria said, her voice sharp. She moved between me and my son like a guard dog. We're starting fresh. This house, the accounts, everything belongs to us. It's time for you to move on. Move on? I've lived here for 35 years. I raised my children here. I helped make the down payment on this house when you two got married. My voice was rising now, tears streaming down my face. Victoria's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. That was generous of you. But circumstances change. You're dead weight now, and we need space for our future. Dead weight. She called me dead weight on the day I buried my husband. I looked at Daniel again, begging him with my eyes to say something, to defend me, to remember who I was. But he just stood there, silent, his face pale and expressionless. This can't be legal. You can't just throw me out. Victoria's smile widened. Actually, we can. Dad left everything to us in the will. The room spun. That's not true. Tom wouldn't do that. Well, he did. Victoria pulled out her phone, waving it at me. He changed everything right before he died. I have all the paperwork. This house, the savings, the insurance policies. All in Daniel's name now. You're not entitled to anything. I felt my knees buckle. My best friend Nina caught me, steadied me. She'd driven me home from the funeral, was supposed to stay for coffee and memories. Instead, she was watching me lose everything. Tom loved me, I said weakly. We were married for 40 years. And now he's gone. People prepare for these things. He obviously wanted to make sure his son was taken care of. Victoria checked her watch. 53 minutes left. I couldn't breathe right. The grief from losing Tom was already crushing me, and now this. I looked around the living room at the furniture we'd picked out together, the family photos on the walls, the coffee stain on the rug from when Daniel was 7. Nina grabbed my arm. Come on, Claire. Get your things. We'll figure this out. In a daze, I packed one suitcase. Just clothes and toiletries. My wedding album. Tom's watch. Everything else felt too heavy to carry. I spent that first night on Nina's couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying Daniel's silence over and over. How could my own son let this happen? The boy I'd nursed through pneumonia, whose college tuition I'd helped pay, who'd cried in my arms when his first girlfriend broke his heart. You should call a lawyer, Nina said, bringing me tea I couldn't drink. This doesn't sound legal. I don't have money for a lawyer. Everything was in joint accounts with Tom. My voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from somewhere far away. The next morning, I forced myself to go through the box of Tom's papers I'd grabbed. My hands shook as I sorted through medical bills, old tax returns, random receipts. Then I found it, a sealed manila envelope with my name written in Tom's handwriting across the front. Inside were legal documents. A will. Our actual will, the one Tom and I had signed together 5 years ago at the lawyer's office downtown. I read through it 3 times, my heart pounding harder with each pass. The house was in both our names. Everything was supposed to go to me first, then to the children after I died. Nothing had been changed. Nothing had been transferred to Daniel. Tom's last words to me in the hospital suddenly came rushing back. "Promise me you'll read the papers, Claire. Promise me." I'd thought he meant funeral arrangements. But he'd meant this. For 3 days, I did nothing. I let Victoria and Daniel believe I'd accepted my fate, that I was just another grieving widow too broken to fight back. Nina kept pushing me to act, but I wasn't ready. I needed to understand what had really happened. I called Tom's doctor, his accountant, anyone who might have information. Slowly, pieces came together. Tom hadn't changed any legal documents in his final weeks. He'd been too sick, barely conscious most days. Whatever Victoria had shown me on her phone was fake. They'd counted on my grief to keep me silent. They'd planned this. The realization felt like ice water in my veins. My own son had helped plot against me while his father was dying. On the 4th day, I walked into the office of Patricia Wright, a family lawyer Nina's sister had recommended. I brought every document I had. Patricia read through everything carefully, her expression darkening. When she finished, she looked up at me with something between sympathy and anger in her eyes. "Mrs. Bennett, they committed fraud. Multiple counts. Forgery, if they created false documents. Unlawful eviction. Possibly elder abuse." She tapped the will. "This house is legally yours. Everything is legally yours. Can we fix this?" She smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who enjoyed justice. "We can do better than fix it." "Do you want justice, or do you want revenge?" Patricia asked, leaning forward. I thought about Daniel's silence, Victoria's smirk, being called dead weight on the worst day of my life. "What's the difference?" "Justice means we file immediately, get you back in your house, expose what they did. Quick and clean." She paused. "Revenge means we let them think they've won first. Let them get comfortable. Let them make more mistakes. Then we take everything." Something hard and cold settled in my chest, pushing aside the grief. How long would that take? A few weeks. Maybe a month. You'd have to watch them living in your house, spending what they think is their money. Patricia studied my face. "Not everyone can handle that." I thought of Tom, how he'd worked 2 jobs to buy that house, how proud he'd been the day we'd moved in. How he'd whispered for me to read the papers because he'd known, somehow, what Victoria might try. "I can handle it," I said. "Tell me what to do." Patricia's smile widened. "First, we document everything they do. Every expense, every change they make to the house, every public statement. We let the rope unwind, Mrs. Bennett. We let them hang themselves with it." We spent the next hour planning. I would stay away, stay quiet, let them believe I was too grief-stricken to fight. Meanwhile, Patricia would gather evidence, build an ironclad case. As I left her office, I felt something I hadn't felt since Tom died: purpose. For 3 weeks, I watched from a distance as Victoria transformed my home. She posted photos on social media constantly. New furniture. Fresh paint. A renovation reveal party with all her friends. In every photo, she looked triumphant. Daniel appeared in some pictures, usually in the background, always looking uncomfortable. Part of me wanted to call him, to ask if he felt any guilt at all. But Patricia had been clear: no contact. Let them think they'd won completely. Nina kept me updated on neighborhood gossip. Victoria had told everyone that Tom had left her and Daniel everything because I'd been difficult in his final months. The lie burned, but I stayed silent. I lived in Nina's spare bedroom, working my part-time job at the library, saving every penny for what came next. At night, I reviewed documents with Patricia, building our case brick by brick. Then, one morning, Nina called me at work, her voice urgent. "Claire, you need to see this." She sent me a link to a real estate listing. My house. Victoria had put it on the market for twice what we'd paid for it 35 years ago. The listing bragged about the recent renovations and motivated sellers. They were trying to sell my home out from under me. I called Patricia immediately. "They're selling the house." "Perfect," she said. "That's fraud we can prove in real time." "Don't worry, Mrs. Bennett. They just made our case bulletproof." Patricia worked fast. Within 24 hours, she'd filed an emergency injunction to stop the sale. She'd also filed a civil suit for fraud, forgery, and unlawful eviction. The documents were delivered to Daniel and Victoria at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday. I wasn't there to see their faces, but I imagined it. The shock. The panic. The dawning realization that I hadn't just disappeared quietly into the night. By noon, Daniel called me for the first time in 3 weeks. I let it ring. He called again. And again. 5 times in an hour. Finally, I answered. "Mom." His voice cracked. "What did you do?" "I told the truth," I said calmly. "Something you should have done 3 weeks ago." "You don't understand." Victoria said. "I don't want to hear about Victoria. You stood there silent while she threw me out of my own home. You let her call me dead weight on the day we buried your father." My voice was steady, cold. "You chose her over me. Over the truth. The lawyers are saying we committed fraud. That's not, we didn't mean. You forged documents, Daniel. You tried to sell a house you don't own. You evicted me illegally. What did you think would happen?" Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "I'm sorry." Sorry isn't enough. I hung up. 2 days later, there was a knock on Nina's door. Through the window, I saw Daniel standing on the porch, alone. He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes red, shoulders slumped. Nina looked at me. "Want me to send him away?" I shook my head. "Let him in." Daniel sat across from me at Nina's kitchen table, his hands clasped so tight his knuckles were white. "Mom, please. We can fix this. Just drop the lawsuit." "Why would I do that?" "Because I'm your son. Because we're family." He looked up at me with pleading eyes. "Victoria made a mistake. She thought the house was ours. She didn't understand the legal stuff. Don't lie to me, Daniel. Not anymore." I slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts of text messages Patricia had subpoenaed. Messages between Daniel and Victoria from weeks before Tom died, discussing how to handle me after the funeral, how to move her out quickly before she causes problems. Daniel's face went white as he read. His hands started shaking. "You planned this," I said. "While your father was dying, you and Victoria planned to steal everything from me." "I didn't, he couldn't form a complete sentence. Victoria said you'd be fine, that you had retirement money, that you didn't need the house like we did. And you believed that made it okay?" He buried his face in his hands. "I didn't want to hurt you." Daniel's voice was muffled behind his hands. "I just wanted Victoria to be happy. She kept saying we needed a bigger house, better accounts. She said you were old and didn't need all that space. I thought maybe she was right. So you chose her comfort over your mother's home. Over what your father wanted." I kept my voice level, but inside, my heart was breaking all over again. "Do you know what that feels like, Daniel? To have your own child betray you?" He looked up, tears streaming down his face. I know I messed up. But please, Mom. If this goes to court, we could face criminal charges. Victoria could go to jail. Our lives will be ruined. Maybe they should be. The words hit him like a slap. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I can't believe you do this to your own son. I can't believe my own son did this to me. I stood too, facing him. You watched her throw me out. You said nothing. You let me pack one suitcase and leave the home where I raised you. Where your father died. My voice finally cracked. How could you, Daniel? He opened his mouth, closed it. Then turned and walked out without another word. Nina came into the kitchen after he left. You okay? No, I said honestly. But I will be. The lawsuit moved forward. Patricia filed for immediate possession of the house, return of all marital assets, and damages for emotional distress. The evidence was overwhelming: forged documents, illegal eviction, attempted property theft. But Victoria wasn't going down quietly. She called a family meeting with Tom's brother and sister, my cousin, anyone who would listen. She painted me as a vindictive old woman trying to ruin her son's life over a misunderstanding. Some people believed her. Tom's sister called me, her voice cold. Claire, how could you sue your own son? Tom would be ashamed. Tom left me that will for a reason, I replied. He knew what might happen. He tried to protect me. You're tearing this family apart over a house. Victoria tore this family apart when she threw me out at my husband's funeral. I'm just making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. She hung up on me. But others started asking questions. Why had Victoria changed the lock so quickly? Why had Daniel been so quiet? When neighbors heard about the forged documents, sympathy began to shift. Tom's brother called me a week later. Claire, I owe you an apology. I looked into things. What Victoria did, that's not okay. I'm testifying on your behalf if this goes to trial. One by one, the truth came out. And the family that had initially sided with the young couple started pulling away. 3 days before the court hearing, Daniel asked to meet me at a coffee shop. Neutral ground. I agreed, bringing Patricia with me. He sat across from us, looking smaller somehow. Diminished. Mom, I need to tell you something. I waited. I knew. His voice was barely a whisper. When Victoria showed you those papers at the door, I knew they weren't real. She'd printed them that morning. I watched her do it. The coffee shop noise faded into background static. You knew. I told myself it would be okay. That you'd find somewhere else to live, that you'd be fine. I knew it was wrong, but Victoria kept saying we deserved this, that we'd worked hard, that you'd just spend the rest of your life alone in that big house anyway. He looked up at me with hollow eyes. I chose the easy path. I chose not to fight with my wife. And I destroyed everything. Why are you telling me this now? Because I can't live with it anymore. Because you're my mother and I betrayed you in the worst possible way. His hands trembled on the table. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I know what I did. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Patricia made a note on her legal pad. His confession would be useful in court. I looked at my son and felt something I didn't expect: pity. The courtroom was cold. I sat on one side with Patricia, Daniel, and Victoria on the other with their lawyer. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Anderson, reviewed the documents with careful attention. Patricia presented our case methodically. The original will. The forged papers Victoria had shown me. Bank records showing no legal transfer of assets. Text messages proving premeditation. Testimony from the locksmith about changing locks without legal authority. Victoria's lawyer tried to argue that it had been a misunderstanding, that his clients had genuinely believed the house was theirs. But when Patricia showed the text messages, Move her out quickly before she causes problems. His argument collapsed. Judge Anderson's expression grew harder with each piece of evidence. Mrs. Bennet, the judge said, turning to Victoria, did you or did you not create false legal documents to convince Mrs. Claire Bennet that she had no claim to her own home? Victoria's confidence, which had carried her through weeks of lies, finally cracked. We thought. Yes or no? Yes. The word came out as a whisper. Did you change the locks on a property you did not legally own? Yes. Did you attempt to sell said property? Yes, but... Thank you. Judge Anderson turned to Daniel. And you, Mr. Bennet, were you aware these actions were illegal? Daniel looked at his lap. Yes. The judge made notes, her pen scratching loudly in the silent courtroom. Judge Anderson's ruling was swift and thorough. The house was mine, legally and unquestionably. All assets were to be returned immediately. Victoria and Daniel had 30 days to vacate. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. Fraud, forgery, and elder abuse are serious crimes in this state. Victoria went pale. Criminal charges? You stole from a grieving widow, Mrs. Bennet. You forged legal documents. You unlawfully evicted someone from their home. The judge's voice was ice. Did you think there would be no consequences? Their lawyer tried to negotiate, but Judge Anderson wasn't interested. The ruling stood. Court adjourned. In the hallway, Victoria turned on Daniel, her voice shrill. This is your fault. You said she wouldn't fight back. You said she was too weak. I never said. We're going to jail because of you. Patricia touched my arm. Mrs. Bennet, you've won. The house is yours again. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt exhausted. What happens now? They vacate in 30 days. If they don't, we get the sheriff to remove them. All renovations they made become your property. You get everything back. She paused. What will you do with it? I looked at Daniel, arguing with Victoria, his face twisted with stress and regret. I don't know yet. 2 weeks later, Daniel called. Mom, can I talk to you? Just us? We met at a park near my old house. Our house. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. Victoria and I are separated, he said. She moved in with her sister. The criminal charges, the lawsuit, everything, it broke us. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. I need to ask you something. He took a shaky breath. Can I move back into the house? Just temporarily, until I find an apartment? I don't have anywhere else to go. The old me, the mother who'd sacrificed everything for her children, wanted to say yes immediately. But the new me, the woman who'd learned what betrayal felt like, said something different. No. Daniel looked stunned. What? No, Daniel. You can't move back in. I kept my voice gentle but firm. Not because I hate you or want to punish you. But because you need to understand consequences. You chose Victoria over me. You chose comfort over doing the right thing. Moving back home would just be another easy path. But I apologized. I testified in court. I admitted everything. And I appreciate that. But apologizing doesn't erase what happened. You need to rebuild your life on your own terms, not by running back to your mother's house. His eyes filled with tears. I made a mistake. You made many mistakes. And now you have to live with them. That's how growth happens. I touched his arm. I love you, Daniel. I always will. But I can't rescue you from this. Victoria called me 3 days after my conversation with Daniel. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. He's blaming me for everything, she said without preamble. Telling everyone I manipulated him, that I forced him to go along with my plan. Did you? We both wanted the house. But now that things went wrong, suddenly it's all my fault. Her voice was bitter. He filed for divorce yesterday. Said he can't be married to someone who destroyed his family. I said nothing, just listened. You got what you wanted, Victoria continued. You destroyed my marriage. No, Victoria. You destroyed your marriage when you forged documents and tried to steal my home. I just told the truth about what you did. She was quiet for a long moment. I didn't think you'd fight back. You seemed so broken at the funeral. I was broken. I just lost my husband. But grief doesn't mean powerless. I thought about Tom's envelope, how he protected me even after death. My husband knew what kind of person you were. That's why he made sure I had the real will. Everyone thinks I'm a monster now. You treated me like I was worthless. You called me dead weight on the day I buried my husband. You tried to take everything from me. I kept my voice steady. I'm not going to feel sorry for you facing consequences. She hung up without another word. The house felt strange when I finally walked back in. Victoria had changed so much, new paint, new floors, new fixtures. It looked beautiful but didn't feel like mine anymore. I spent a week there, walking through rooms filled with memories that no longer matched the walls around them. Tom's reading chair was gone. The kitchen where we'd made Sunday dinners for 40 years had been gutted and modernized. Our bedroom, where he died peacefully one Tuesday morning, was now painted a color called coastal mist. Nina found me crying in the empty living room on the third day. What's wrong? You won. You got your house back. I don't want it anymore, I said. Every room reminds me of what Victoria took. Even getting it back doesn't make those memories less painful. So what will you do? I thought about it. Really thought about what I wanted, not what I was supposed to want. I'm going to sell it, I said. I'm going to take the money and start completely fresh. Somewhere new. Somewhere that's just mine. That's a big decision. I've made bigger ones lately. I wiped my eyes. I fought for this house because it was the right thing to do, because they couldn't be allowed to steal it. But that doesn't mean I have to live here. Tom would understand. 2 weeks later, I listed the house for sale. It sold in 4 days. With the money from the sale, I bought a small cottage near the ocean, 2 hours north. It had a porch where I could watch the sunrise, a garden for vegetables, and one bedroom that was exactly the right size for me. No memories lived in these walls. No ghosts of what I'd lost. Just possibility. I furnished it slowly, carefully, choosing each piece myself. Colors I liked. Furniture that fit. A kitchen designed for one person who enjoyed cooking. For the first time in 40 years, every decision was completely mine. Nina visited on the second weekend, bringing wine and groceries. Claire, this place is perfect. It is, isn't it? I stood on the porch, listening to the ocean. I feel lighter here. You look lighter. You look happy. I realized she was right. Somewhere between losing everything and fighting to get it back, I'd found something unexpected, myself. Not Tom's wife. Not Daniel's mother. Just Claire. A person with her own wants, her own needs, her own life. The doorbell rang one afternoon, 3 weeks after I'd moved in. I opened it to find Daniel standing there, looking nervous. How did you find me? Nina told me. I hope that's okay. I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. Daniel stood in my new living room, looking around with careful eyes. It's nice, Mom. Really nice. Thank you. I gestured to the couch. Do you want tea? No, I just came to talk. He sat down, hands clasped between his knees. I've been seeing a therapist. Working through everything that happened. That's good. She's been helping me understand why I let Victoria manipulate me like that. Why I chose silence over standing up for what was right. He looked up at me. I was scared, Mom. Scared of conflict, scared of disappointing my wife, scared of admitting I'd married someone who could do something so cruel. I understand being scared, I said. But you're an adult, Daniel. Being scared isn't an excuse for betrayal. I know. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not making excuses anymore. His voice was steady now, clearer than it had been in months. I'm responsible for what I did. Not Victoria, not fear, not anything else. Me. I hurt you. I betrayed you. And I'm sorry. This was different from his earlier apologies. Those had been about him, about avoiding consequences, about wanting me to fix things. This was about me. About acknowledging what he'd done. I appreciate you saying that. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he continued. Not yet. I know I haven't earned it. I just wanted you to know I'm working on being better. Being the son you deserved all along. We sat in silence for a moment, the ocean breeze drifting through my open window. I do forgive you, I said quietly. But Daniel, forgiving you doesn't mean things go back to how they were. It doesn't mean I trust you. It doesn't mean our relationship is fixed. He nodded. I understand. Forgiveness is something I'm doing for me, not for you. I'm choosing not to carry anger around anymore. But trust? That has to be earned back. And it might take years. I know. He stood up. I'm moving to Oregon next month. New job, fresh start. I wanted to tell you in person. Oregon's nice. Mom, he stopped, started again. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be the kind of man Dad would have been proud of. Even if you never see it, I'm going to do it. I walked him to the door. Before he left, I hugged him briefly. I hope you do, Daniel. I really do. After he drove away, I sat on my porch and watched the sunset paint the ocean gold and pink. Forgiveness felt different than I'd expected. Not like forgetting, not like erasing the past. More like setting down something heavy I'd been carrying. Tom would have understood. He'd always been better at letting things go than I was. A month later, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mrs. Bennett? It's Victoria. I almost hung up. Almost. What do you want? I need help. Her voice was small, defeated. The criminal charges, they're moving forward. My lawyer says I could face jail time. My family won't speak to me. I lost my job. I have nowhere to go. And you're calling me? I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I'm desperate. I thought maybe, she broke off. I thought maybe you could talk to the prosecutor. Tell them I'm not a bad person, that I made a mistake. I listened to her breathe on the other end of the line, this woman who'd called me dead weight, who'd thrown me out of my home, who'd tried to steal everything Tom and I had built. Victoria, I can't help you. Please. I'm begging you. You made choices. You forged documents. You committed fraud. You traumatized me at the worst moment of my life. My voice was calm, factual. Those actions have consequences. I can't save you from them. So you're just going to let me go to jail? I'm not letting anything happen. You did this to yourself. She started crying. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was greedy and stupid and I hurt you for no reason. Yes, you did. Can't you forgive me? I thought about that. Maybe someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to help you. It doesn't mean I owe you anything. I just need you to tell them I'm not evil, Victoria pleaded through her tears. That I made a mistake but I'm not a monster. Victoria, I'm going to say this once, and then I'm going to hang up. I kept my voice level, free of anger or cruelty. What you did was wrong. You knew it was wrong when you did it. You hurt me deliberately, calculating that I'd be too broken to fight back. Now you're facing consequences, and you want me to rescue you. Let me finish. I don't hate you. I don't wish terrible things on you. But I also don't owe you anything. Not my help, not my sympathy, not my intervention with the courts. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. That's how being an adult works. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, you're right. I know. I ruined everything. My marriage, my reputation, my future. And I did it for a house. She laughed bitterly. A house I didn't even get to keep. You did it because you thought you could. Because you thought I was weak. Because you didn't see me as a person who mattered. I looked out at the ocean, the waves steady and constant. That was your biggest mistake. I see that now. Good. Learn from it. I paused. Goodbye, Victoria. I hung up before she could respond. Then I blocked her number. Nina called an hour later. How are you feeling? Surprisingly good, I said. I chose dignity over revenge. I didn't help her, but I also didn't gloat or be cruel. I just let her go. Tom would be proud. The next few weeks brought a strange peace. I woke up each morning to the sound of the ocean, made coffee in my small kitchen, worked in my garden. My life was simple, quiet, completely my own. I started volunteering at a local senior center, helping elderly people navigate legal issues with housing and estates. My experience with Victoria and Daniel had taught me something valuable. Many people face similar betrayals and don't know how to fight back. My son wants me to sign over my house, one woman told me. He says it's to avoid estate taxes, but I don't know. Don't sign anything without a lawyer reviewing it, I advised. And make sure you understand exactly what you're signing. It's your home. Protect it. She looked at me with grateful eyes. You sound like you know what you're talking about. I learned the hard way. I also started writing. Not a book, not anything formal. Just my story, what happened, how I survived it. The senior center director suggested I share it at a support group for widows. 30 women showed up. When I finished speaking, the room was silent. Then one by one, they started sharing their own stories of children who tried to take advantage, relatives who'd stolen, partners who'd hidden assets. We weren't alone. None of us were. You gave me hope, one woman said afterward. I thought I was too old to fight back. You're never too old, I said. And you're never too weak. Those are just things people tell you to make you easier to control. That night, alone in my cottage, I thought about Tom. About the envelope he'd left me, the final gift that had saved everything. He'd known. Somehow, in those last weeks of his life, he'd seen what Victoria was capable of. Maybe he'd noticed how she looked at our house, at our accounts. Maybe he'd overheard conversations. Or maybe he'd just had a husband's intuition that I'd need protection. Promise me you'll read the papers, he'd whispered. He hadn't just meant read them. He'd meant use them. Fight with them. Survive with them. Tom had given me more than a will. He'd given me proof that I mattered. That my life had value. That I deserved to be protected and honored, even after he was gone. I'd been so focused on grief, on missing him, that I'd almost missed his final message. You are strong. You are capable. You deserve everything we built together. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The papers he'd left weren't just legal documents. They were love letters. They were his way of saying, I see you. I know your worth. I'm making sure everyone else knows it too. I walked out onto my porch, watching the moon reflect on the ocean. Thank you, Tom, I whispered to the night sky. You saved me even after you were gone. The wind picked up, warm and gentle. It felt like an answer. 6 months after Victoria kicked me out of my home, I stood on my porch watching the sunrise paint the ocean in shades of gold and coral. I was 63 years old, a widow, living alone in a cottage I'd bought with money from a house I'd fought to reclaim. I was free. Not free from grief, Tom's absence still hurt every single day. Not free from pain, Daniel's betrayal had left scars that might never fully heal. But free from feeling powerless. Free from believing that kindness meant letting people hurt me. Free from the idea that being a good mother, a good person, meant accepting cruelty in silence. Victoria had thought I was weak because I was grieving. Daniel had thought I wouldn't fight because I was his mother. They'd both learned the same lesson: grief doesn't mean powerless, and kindness doesn't mean submission. I'd lost my husband. I'd lost the home we'd shared. I'd lost the relationship I'd had with my son. But I'd found something I didn't know I'd been missing: myself. My voice. My strength. My absolute refusal to be made small. The legal case had concluded. Victoria pleaded guilty to fraud and received probation plus restitution. Daniel faced no criminal charges but lost his marriage and his mother's blind trust. They were both rebuilding their lives somewhere far from mine. I hoped they learned. I hoped they became better. But whether they did or didn't, I was done carrying that burden. My life now was simple and full: volunteering, gardening, helping other women find their strength. Some days I missed Tom so much I could barely breathe. Other days I felt his presence in every sunset, every wave, every moment of peace I'd carved out for myself. I'd survived the worst betrayal I could imagine. And I'd come out the other side stronger, wiser, free. The sun finished rising, and I smiled at the ocean. I was never weak. I just needed to remember that.